we always start with the latest on health and healing. And I got a person who asked me a question on the street when I was at the farmer's market the other day. And the person's a physician and came over to me and said, you're Gary Null. Yeah. He says, what do you got against saving people's lives? I said, I do save people's lives, a lot of them. He says, no, you're anti-vaccine. I said, says who? Show me the proof of that. And you're against medicine. I said, to the contrary. I said, let me explain this. I want to explain it for everyone in this audience. I am 100% in support of vaccines if, and here's caveat emptor, consumer beware, if they can be proven safe and effective based upon classical double-blind placebo-controlled study where the placebo is a saline saltwater solution, and what they've been using up to this point is other vaccines as the placebo, which is a fraudulent study, or they've been using aluminum as an adjuvant, which itself is neurotoxic and cause all kinds of immunological problems. So there is no study that I can find that's a true placebo-controlled study. Also, if you're going to do a proper study, you have to follow it for at least 3 to 5 years because many symptoms only manifest years later. But the vaccine court says you have to file your case with the Justice Department, and they're not friendly, within 90 days. But only a small percentage of vaccines' adverse effects will come within that 90 days. So it's a rigged system. So if you have that everyone who has a vaccine-injured child will be compensated, and if you have that there is proof, independent proof, not the makers of the vaccine, but an independent scientific review board that reviews the studies and says this is safe and effective, I would support it. Same way with drugs. I've been promoting 4 different medications, including hydroxychloroquine, that's been used for 65 years safely, because the peer-reviewed scientific literature on PubMed supports it, plus doctors' statements support it, plus clinical studies support it, plus the top epidemiologist in America, MD, PhD from Yale, and who is also sits on the board, review board of peer-reviewed literature, has published 300 articles, says it is the most effective drug he has ever seen in his life for treating a condition. And it's safe. And there's studies. Well, then I support that. I'm not telling people to take alternative doctors' therapies. In fact, I've not even had a single alternative doctor give their therapies, yet I know they work, because that's the basis of this program. But we give that every day and have for 53 years. So instead, I wanted to show you what within orthodox medicine works. I'm a big supporter of any kind of emergency medicine, anything such as you get your eye cut, or you need retinal surgery to reattach your retina if it's detached, or you need stem cell therapy if you have a particular type of cancer, or you need any kind of emergency medicine, if you've had a heart attack or stroke, if you've had something burned. We're the best in the world of helping with emergency medicine. Here's the problem, and I fully support that. That represents about 12% of all medicine, which means 88% of medicine is chronic care, and that fails miserably. And who says it fails miserably? They do, the doctors and organizations. How do we know? Because for 5 years, a team of us, all experienced researchers and clinicians, including 4 MDs and myself, a PhD, we did the work only using their statistics. And using their statistics, we came that it was the number 1 cause of death. Now, the AMA has officially said it's the 3rd leading cause of death. We wrote to the chairman of the board of the AMA and showed him our statistics and said, your statistics are not complete. You did not include infections, including bed sores, gangrene that people die from. In 1 year, 88,000. Malnutrition. In 1 year, 50,000 people died of malnutrition in hospitals that they got from being in the hospital. And some other conditions that they didn't put up on their list. We did. Ours is a more comprehensive review. Mind you, these are only people dying in a hospital, but not at home. So imagine each year, more or less, depending upon from 500,000 to nearly 1 million people die because of iatrogenesis or medical-based disease. That is far worse by magnitudes than the Corona-19 virus. And we don't shut down a single thing or do anything because of these people dying. Now, we should have proper care, but we don't. I'm for universal health care, and I've laid it out how everybody who chose could be covered for all conditions for their entire life, and it would save us $2 trillion a year. And I laid it out and sent it to members of Congress. Not a single thing was done. We published it. Nothing was done about it. How to save the environment. These are things that we give people the calls to action. Here's the proof of what we could do if we planted 1 billion trees a year, which we could easily do. But we haven't done a single thing. So we're in the mess we are today. So medicine hasn't done anything to stop using things like synthetic hormone replacement therapy. So yes, I challenge it because what they're doing is causing lives. But I also did 44 clinical studies. I don't know of anyone else in America that's done 44 health clinical studies and published in peer-reviewed journals and presented my information at scientific conferences throughout the world. But they won't use how to reverse or prevent menopause naturally. But 500 women in this audience were in this study for a year, meeting every week, and they did it. So the truth is not within the orthodox model. Therefore, you can do two things. You can promote an alternative model that is based upon quality science coming from PubMed and peer review, or you can promote only the orthodox pharmaceutical approach, which is not in PubMed, which is based upon the power of politics and propaganda. So that is my position. So, I'll give you an example of this. Tokyo University of Science. Now, we know that there are various plants and their products, and they're known to contain what is called bioactive, B-I-O-A-C-T-I-V, bioactive ingredients that can alleviate human diseases. Now, these phyto compounds often contain restorative biological properties such as anti-cancerous, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects. Thus, understanding how they interact with the body can lead to potential treatments using what we call functional foods against most of the major immune disorders. And that's exactly what they found. It was a several years study, and they identified functional foods and their positive impact on the body. Tremendous success. This was published in the FASEB journal. That's a scientific journal. And they said that it was the polyphenolic compound called stilberin, PSB. It is not spelled as it sounds. It's with a PT. But what you have to know is this nutrient is in blueberries in a large amount, and it turns off chronic diseases, including inflammatory bowel disease, which is very common today. So does aloe vera, by the way, and curcumin. So if you use blueberries and curcumin and aloe vera, put it all in a drink, you will go a long way to helping yourself. Also, resveratrol does good work on turning off pro-inflammatory cytokines in the body. So resveratrol is also a polyphenol, and it's immunomodulatory. It is strongly anti-inflammatory, and it's good against colitis, spastic colon, diverticulitis. All your itis is in your intestine. Something that simple. So, by the way, there are two types of immune cells. There are what is called the dendritic cells, or the DCs, and the T cells. They're also involved at the onset of immune response. For example, your DC cells produce inflammatory cytokines and activate T cells to initiate a defense response. And this process together form a complex pathway that results in what is called a hyperimmune response. Thus, to find an effective compound that can suppress the immune system, it was crucial to test it on this popular immune cells. And that's how they found how powerful blueberries were in this. So you want some inflammation, because inflammation tells you that you have an injury. But you don't want that inflammation to go from mild to full cytokine storm, because then you get swelling and pain and retention of fluid. So, one more reason to have your berries every day. From the HSC University in Russia comes an interesting study published in the journal Mindfulness. Loving kindness meditation will make you happier than compassion meditation. And loving kindness meditations turn out to be more effective when it comes to increasing happiness. But in contrast with previous studies, compassion meditation also did not result in a growth of negative emotions. They both are good. But you see, with compassion, you're feeling the pain, or you're feeling some form of emotion towards that which is you consider unjust, shaming someone that did not deserve to be shamed, or a bullying, whatever it is that is a grievance. In your meditation, you can feel compassion for the sufferer. Whereas loving kindness is you actually extend the love. You extend your kindness. You become proactive. One is passive. I'm sorry for your suffering. Another is, how can I help you with your suffering? One is, it's terrible what they're doing to you. And the other is, we can change this if we work together. So I think loving kindness meditation is very important, especially with the world we live in today, where a lot of people could use some loving kindness and some help. Also, when we isolate children, and we don't allow them to play with other children, don't get outside, this kind of social isolation during childhood, according to Mount Sinai School of Medicine, it can adversely affect specific brain circuitry. It can damage it. So loneliness is recognized as a serious threat to mental health. Even as our world becomes increasingly connected over digital platforms, young people in our society are feeling a growing sense of isolation. And the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced many countries to implement social distancing and school closures, magnifies the need for understanding the mental health consequences of social isolation and loneliness. And while research has shown that social isolation during childhood in particular is detrimental to adult brain function and behavioral across mammalian species, the underlying neural circuit mechanisms have remained poorly understood. Now, a team at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai has identified specific subpopulations of brain cells in the prefrontal cortex. That's a key part of your brain that regulates social behavior that are required for normal sociability. And so if we don't have this sociability and socializing as young people, and if we stay secluded and spend too much time on our computers, and then in adulthood, we can be profoundly vulnerable to the consequences. This was published in Nature Neuroscience. So socialize, especially children, and don't hyper guard them. Don't be the helicopter mother or father that hovers over your children so they can never make a mistake, and you're always there to defend them and to protect them and keep them isolated. People have to see the world for what it is. I remember once, not long ago, just 2 years ago, I was premiering a film at the Huntington Arts Cinema. And there's a scene in it that's very graphic. It's about how food gets to the table. And it shows the abuse in factory farming and slaughterhouses. Now, mind you, these are all sentient beings. And as someone who is, I was just doing some counting yesterday, and I believe it's over 5,000 animals I've rescued and got back to health, physical and emotional health, and found a loving home for life for. I can tell you that these animals are extremely intelligent, and they really respond to love. And once you give them love, wherever you're at, they'll go there and they'll lay on the ground right beside you and put their head in your lap and just look up at you. And of course your heart melts because there's these beautiful eyes looking at you, and they just want to be loved. How could you accept that that creature is going to be, in effect, tortured and abused so you can have your steak? So while this was going on, I was outside in the lobby, and because it was packed house, I didn't want to take anyone's seat. And this teenager comes out. And I said, and it was just standing there. I said, what's wrong with the movie? Too graphic. Which part? Yeah, about the animals, the calves. I said, you eat veal? Yeah. Eat chicken? Yeah. Well, now you know where it comes from. Are you still going to eat it, knowing that something has to suffer and die when you didn't need it at all? I don't know how to handle this. I've never been exposed to this. And then the mother comes out and says, you need to see this. And takes the kid, walks him back in. And at the end, the mother was appreciative, said, this is one of the very painful lessons that someone has to learn. And I'm sorry that I never thought about showing my child where food comes from. I said, well, you know something better? Take some time and go up online and download where your farmers are living and what they're doing and how hard they work and how dedicated they are and how humble they are, how gracious they are. And we don't even think about them. Without that farmer working 7 days a week, because if you own a farm or a ranch, you got to be on call all the time. And they're some of the hardest working people in the world. They get the least appreciation. So the person said they would. So again, it's a matter of using the opportunity to see life for what it is, even when what we're seeing can embarrass us or offend us or cause an inner outrage. I'd rather know the truth and then look for how I could respond to it in an appropriate and peaceful manner than not to know the truth because it was more than my being could handle. That's the latest on health and healing.